title of our presentation here today is The Future of Work is Better Together with Webex and Prodoscore. So, the focus here is really around, the paradigm, the shift that has happened in the last 24 months. Like we were on this journey towards the future of work, if we go back 24 months ago, but there have been some small events that have happened globally, which have driven the future of work to where we are today. And what we want to share here today is how our perspective on what we're hearing here in Webex and what we're hearing from our customers, what does that mean? Now, as Nadine already outlined, my name is Colin McNeilis. I'm a business development manager here in Cisco. And with David, we're going to take you on the perspective that we're seeing from our customers and how we can make that future of work, that hybrid work experience better for you. So what does the future of work look like? Well, it's really very simple. Again, we live this every day. You can see I'm not in an office, and you can see that my colleagues here who are on the call today are all working from remote locations. And that kind of a bit of a misnomer in some respects, like what is a remote location? It's just another place where people actually do work. But what we're finding increasingly is sometimes we work from home, sometimes we work from the office, and then there's that space in between. And that's really, really important that we have the capability to work across all those experience points, etc., and able to deliver experience of collaboration, of interaction, the way we work with people into those three different areas, and have that normalized somewhat so that it's not different irrespective of where you work. So what we're hearing from our employees, from our engagement with our customers and from our partners, etc., is that somewhere in the region of 77% of people or employees will embrace a flexible work style. Now, of course, this is really, really important to you, our customers who are joining us on the webinar today, because those people have got to be able to remain productive, got to be able to be big contributors to the company and the way we work on a daily basis. So that's the vast majority of the employees that you work with on a day-to-day basis. And for your customers, that's applicable to them as well. The future of work is hybrid, it is here. So how did we get here? So it's always worth looking at the transformation we all have experienced as regard technology, collaboration. So the transition is really, that transition is really accelerated. It is accelerated from, we were on this journey anyway, going from the world of, towards the world of hybrid work. But the pandemic really, really accelerated, and it also exposed some of the challenges with regard to that journey to hybrid work. So pre-pandemic, most people worked in the office and, now and again worked from home. We settled for compromised technology and compromised collaboration experience as part of that, work activity. Even within the office, you'd be sitting at your desk, you go to a conference room, the experience in the conference room, etc., might have been different than what you have at the desktop. And then, what happened? Sometime around the middle of March, the pandemic hit back in 2020. So, what happened is we all scrambled. It was a case of necessity. We picked up our laptop, picked up whatever bits and pieces we had in our office, and we all went home. And we set ourselves up in the rooms in our house. It could have been at the kitchen table. It could have been, at your desktop, the island in your kitchen, or you might have had a room where you could have actually had worked from for remotely. So it was really, really, I suppose, stressful and disconcerting, etc. But what we could see really happening at that point in time is there was a transition happening. And some crazy things happened, as regards working with our customers. We had customers, in a single country where 500,000 people just switched on to the Webex platform in one day. And it was in education where the need to deliver virtual education was just imperative and had to be done. We saw our video usage just going up like mad on our platform, that exponential growth in video usage, because people were really, needed to work, but, once again, they needed to make sure that, video is a really good way of having a great collaboration experience. And of course that put, stress, etc., on platforms, etc., in order to make that a reality. But from a Webex perspective, that's something that, just happened and was really, really an amazing aspect. Now, I think to a fault, everybody here on the call would agree, hybrid work is here to stay. Many of us are excited to get back to the office. I'm one of those people. I go in most days to meet with colleagues, to have that richness of collaboration at the the water cooler or the coffee machine or whatever the case may be, for those inspirational moments. But we also need to be able to work productively and securely from anywhere and any device, whether it's in the office, whether it's at home, or in that place in between, that any place. So fundamentally, however, good enough collaboration, that laptop under your arm, it's just not good enough. People need to have experiences of hybrid work that allows them to, be able to work at the same productive level as they would be when they were in the office, when they're at home, or in that anytime space. And that's something that hybrid work is, that future work is striving to actually go and deliver upon. So is hybrid work harder to adjust to? Well, I suppose a lot of it's got to do with the capabilities, the collaboration capabilities and the collaboration tools that you have. But we know, for example, that 98% of all meetings going forward will have at least one remote participant. Now, again, I come back to that, word remote. It doesn't really hold true. And we just look at the, the panelists here on the call here today, and I'm sure it's applicable to all the attendees here on the call today as well. Remote is really not appropriate. It's not appropriate to a vocabulary. There is no such thing as a remote location. It's just distributed locations. But again, the tools need to be there, and the collaboration tools need to be there at each of those locations to deliver that amazing collaboration experience, to get work done. So what are our customers asking for? Well, our customers are looking for a tapestry, a blueprint for hybrid work. And consistently, four things come up. One, they want a single solution with a common experience. Remember what happened back when the pandemic struck? Picked up our laptop and we went running home. That was out of necessity. Now that hybrid work is here and the future work is here, whether you're remote or whether you're on the go or in the office, there needs to be a common collaboration experience. We know that it needs to be simple and be available on different devices, different operating systems that people are using on a daily basis. Events are really critical. We're back doing events again, which is fantastic. We get to meet customers and get to meet partners, etc. However, events are becoming more hybrid. So a lot more people are joining events virtually. So there needs to be tools to ensure that people can get a near-like experience when they join virtually. And finally, customers want to integrate collaboration tools, their applications on their desktops, into meetings, into messaging, into calling, into video, and into contact center, just as it would be in the office, just to make that a much more context aware and much more richer experience as you're using the applications on your desktop. So what does this look like? What does the world of, what does the future of work look like, and what does hybrid work experience look like? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to run a short video, and the purpose of the short video is really just to help articulate what that experience looked like. So just give me a second here.
How do you elevate hybrid work?
Okay, Webex, start my meeting.
Looks noisy over there.
Can you hear me okay?
I can only hear you. Any questions? Let's take a poll.
So folks, you get the idea there, the experiences that, people expect in this future of work world, in this hybrid work world, and no better way of doing it than articulating it through a short video to articulate that. So hopefully you've seen, Webex provides that platform that powers collaboration experiences for the future of work. That single pane of glass for management, with analytics to understand what happens or what is happening at a collaboration level, and within security, part of that experience, because irrespective of whether you're in the office, whether you're at home, or that place in between, really important that the assets of the enterprise are protected, etc. So finally, one key cornerstone of the future of work is the ability to leverage the suite of interfaces that Webex offers to expose, the collaboration hooks into application experiences so that employees can work wherever they are working. The goal is to drive a seamless experience, and working with Prodoscore, one of our partners that we work with from a Webex perspective, to drive that seamless experience. I'd now like to hand you over to David, President of Prodoscore, who will take you through the proposition with regard to the Prodoscore offering. David, let me just pass over controls to you.
Thanks, Colm. And for our attendees this morning, great to be with y'all. I think you'll notice that Colm is in Ireland and I'm in Birmingham, Alabama, and it's amazing that we have the exact same accent. So it is just really a treat for you guys to hear the exact same accent throughout the entire thing, and that it is, who would have known that the accent would be the same between Birmingham, Alabama and Ireland. But in seriousness, this is a hot topic, and we thank all of you for joining us today. And, in boardrooms across America, this topic is being discussed. How do we go forward? What does this look like? What's the future of work really look like? And as Cole mentioned, we all kind of remember the before times, pre-March 2020. Everyone's in the conference room, they're meeting. What you would have seen off camera here, just a little to the right, would have been the line of people with their laptops waiting to come in for the next meeting, because this meeting was running over, and there was always this fight around who has conference rooms and who can sign up for them and where do we need to go and all that kind of stuff. And that's really, what everyone enjoyed during that time. The camaraderie that came from the office, everyone was in the office, and it was easy to build those connections and build rapport with one another. And, a lot of people found their human experience in the office is this is where I found my friends. This is where I found my, hangout group, and all that was going on inside the office. Companies were investing heavily in kind of cool, edgy office space. This open concept office that you see here, where everyone is shoulder to shoulder, and you have, a chessboard over here. There's probably a ping pong table off camera, and there was a break room somewhere with, LaCroix in the fridge and Cliff Bars in the drawers. And that was what, drew people in. It was this camaraderie and kind of the way that the office was structured. The question is, a lot of people enjoyed that kind of culture, but let's be real, a lot of companies realize that that's just a little bit cheaper than getting everyone a dedicated office. So while everyone was shoulder to shoulder and put in there, Some people enjoy that. Some people, that's not their preferred, way to work. Going to the office and all kind of the, good aspects of being in the office also lots of times came with that soul crushing commute. You had to spend a lot of money just to get to work. Maybe you had to, expensive metropolitan transit fees, or maybe you had to spend a bunch of money to park your car. With gas prices getting higher, people were spending more money on gas. Then you had this kind of like tension in your head. It's like, okay, what time do I need to leave to get to, my kid's lacrosse game? Or what time do I need to leave to get to that function at school? Or what time do I need to leave to get to that exercise class that I committed to, going to at the start of the year to get more healthy? So you had all of this stuff going on at once. There were great benefits to being in the office: collaboration in person, camaraderie, human experience. And then there was a lot of stuff that came with it that everyone didn't necessarily like, kind of a lack of privacy from the open office concept, painful commutes, tension about what time do you leave to get to the things that you need to go to. And then one day, middle of March 2020, everyone immediately became a little box, right? Became a little box on the screen. And you began to sit there and think, holy cow, does that person even work with me? I've never even met that person. Or where do they live? And a question that we've never asked really before in the working world became kind of the way you start with meetings. Where are you located? When we started this meeting, when we were in the pre-meeting, I asked Jessica, I'm like, where are you? Right? She told me where she was physically. But as before, no one ever asked that because you were in the office or in one of the remote locations of your company, and everyone knew where everyone was. Now all of a sudden, people moved, people went to different areas, and now you're beginning to figure out, oh, well, they seem to have a great work setup, or what's that book on their bookcase back there? I think I've read that book. And a lot of new questions kind of came up, but there were also people that had been onboarded during this time that you've never met in person, right? The only time you've ever seen them is in this little box on your screen as you talk to them regularly. I think one thing that also kind of came out through all this that is becoming a hot topic is, when you were in the office, work was like it is there on the left, right? You're sitting in traffic, you're getting lunch, you're getting coffee, you're maybe standing around the water cooler. I live in the South. In the South, in the fall, on Fridays, you talk about the football games coming up that weekend, and on Mondays, you talk about the football games that occurred this weekend. So there was a lot of that. But when you're at home, people seem to work a lot. And that's actually one of the challenges right now. Is we used to talk about this idea of like work-life balance. And now there's a lot more conversation around work-life separation. I mean, you may have heard that phrase, that the goldfish that grows to the size of its container. Well, work has really kind of been like that. As you wake up and there's work, it's just right here in this room. So I can eat my Cliff Bar and then come in here and do work. And then after dinner, I'll just go check email for a minute or two. And then you're in here for 3 hours later. So work has begun to encroach upon all of your home time. And that's a struggle. People are legitimately burning out. People are legitimately like, I can't continue to work at this pace. So it's a struggle to figure out how we do that and become more effective and balance between those two things that you see there on the screen. So this person here can be one of two people, right? This person here can be frustrated that they just got the email that says it's time to return to the office, that the boss wants butts in seats, and they've got to go back, and she's really enjoyed, sitting at her home office, right? Or this is the person who is like, oh no, I got another Webex meeting coming up, and I'm tired of these things. I want to go back in the office. I want to see my friends. I enjoy the hustle and bustle of being in a downtown office environment. So you've got really kind of two things at work here, where not everyone wants to go back. Not everyone wants to stay at home. And, as Colm said, the answer is going to be hybrid, I feel like, is that a lot of companies are going to have that. But a lot of companies right now are positioning it as this either or prospect. Is everyone must be remote, or everyone should come back to the office? We're got to pull up, how are you currently working? Has your company made a decision on this, or is this still something that you guys are working out? Just this past week, this article hit, which I think is interesting, in Bloomberg. I was reading this earlier this week. It says employees are returning to the office just to sit on Zoom calls. So companies are kind of doing this in this ad hoc basis, and they're not yet figuring out what's the right answer. So if everyone comes to the office and sits shoulder to shoulder, but everyone is on a WebEx or a Zoom call or whatever it may be because other people are remote, well, then why should I even come to the office? Why don't I just stay at home? So companies need to figure out, how do we balance this? And one of our prospects and clients that we were talking to was talking about, how do they not create second-class citizens, right? And that could play out one of two ways. One way is that you come to the office, and in the office, maybe your culture is a little stifling and stuff. And so you come to the office and you feel, soul crushing cubicle world, whereas some of your coworkers are remote and they're, sitting on the sofa in pajama pants with the workplace mullet. They got a corporate golf shirt on up here and, basketball shorts below or something. And so then the people at home are all happy and everything. The people in the office feel, or flip it. People in the office, you've got, break rooms fully stocked. They're ordering in lunch. People are going out at 4 o'clock for happy hour, and the boss is dropping his American Express card behind the bar, buying drinks for everybody, and the people working at home start their day at 7 and end it at 7 with all these back-to-back meetings. So companies really need to figure out, how do we do this? How do we do this right? And how do we not create second-class citizens one way or the other as we begin to do this? Some of our talking, this is both proven through data and anecdotal conversations, is that your willingness to work remote or your effectiveness working remote is really dependent on whether or not you have dedicated office space. Some people, like me, I had this, nice dedicated office here. I can pull that sliding door there closed and cut off the rest of the house, and I can be, in here and focused and private in a way. Other people, they're migrating around the house. When the kids come home from school, they were in this room and now they're in another room, and they don't have that dedicated space. Willingness to work remote is largely dependent upon, do I have dedicated space? And effectiveness working remote is really driven by the data, shows that if you have dedicated office space, you are largely as or more productive as you would be in the office. If you are kind of the nomad, where you're migrating around the house all day or your apartment all day, then you're quite frankly not as effective based on the data. And then, so you've got this other thing on the other side where the companies now are looking at their office space and no one's been there for 2 years. And these are expensive Class A office buildings downtown that, when they signed these leases, 7-year leases, when they signed them, everyone was coming to the office and they had finished them out super nice, and they had paid up to have it close to the transit stops or close to convenient parking or whatever it may be. And now they're looking like, no one's been in here for 2 years. What do we do? How do we think this through? And if they all come back, are they going to want to sit shoulder to shoulder? Or during, right now in the South, it's spring, and so all my flowers are blooming, but pollen's everywhere. And so everyone in the South right now has this little cough or something, or a sniffle from the pollen. Do you want to go sit in the office and wonder, does this guy really just have allergies, or is there something else going on next to him? So companies have to think through, how do we allocate our office space? What do we think about this? What are our long-term plans as it relates to office space? So these are hard questions, right? Companies are kind of exasperated trying to answer these. Is that one customer we were talking to told us this is the first issue as a HR professional or an executive, that there's not someone else you can call and ask for the answers to the test, right? So if you had a sexual harassment issue in the office, you could call one of your colleagues or a peer in another company and say, like, hey, how did y'all handle that? Or you have someone in your office with a substance abuse problem. You can call somebody and say, hey, how did you handle that? There's no one that you can call and say, hey, how did you return to work in a hybrid environment in a technology-enabled era after a global pandemic? No one's done this, right? So everyone is figuring it out themselves. And that puts a lot of pressure on companies, and it makes them question, are they doing the right thing? Because they don't know. There's no playbook, there's no answer. So there's a lot of fear, uncertainty, and doubt inside the C-suite around, how do we think about this return to work initiative? I'm willing to do a couple home improvement projects here and there. I can change out some electrical, I can rewire a lamp, I can hang ceiling fan. I don't do plumbing or anything like that. But one thing that you learn if you ever endeavor to do a little home improvement project is that having the right tools makes a huge difference, right? So you've got these problems. How do we bring people back? How do we think about that? But companies, are a little confused as what tools are available, to them. And if you have the right tool, it makes everything else really easy. And we think that Prodoscore is an effective tool for helping companies think through that. Another one of my friends is a corporate pilot. He said the thing you do before, he's retired lieutenant colonel from the Air Force, and he said one of the things when you walk around a plane before you take off. So before the pilot goes in on his pre-flight checklist, you walk around the plane. You're checking the air in the tires, you're looking at the brakes, you're inspecting the engines, you're looking for like pools of hydraulic fluid, which is a bad thing, and stuff. And these are just like general kind of guidelines. And so, but that's not nearly enough to be equipped to take the plane where it's supposed to go. When he gets in the plane, there's all the information he needs, all this data to allow him to effectively navigate the plane to its destination. The walk around before is useful, but it only gives him a small amount of information. Being inside the cockpit gives him all the information. This, to me, is a very good analogy for where a lot of managers are. A lot of management has gone all the way back to the 1960s with Peter Drucker's book, The Effective Executive, of management by walking around. I come in the mornings and I get my water and I'm strolling around and take a little sip. Hey, Colm, how are you doing? And Colm's like, good, David. Good to see you. And then I walk around. Hey, Nadine, how are you doing? Good to see you. And maybe I saw that Nadine got there at 7 and left at 7, and Colm got there at 9 and left at 4. In the old days, I might think, like, Nadine, she's the good employee. She got here at 7 and left at 7, and Colm, guy's kind of slacking, got here at 9 and left at 4. But absent the real data, I don't really know. Our tool can show you that Nadine got there at 7, left at 7, didn't do a whole lot. She stood around the break room and talked with her friends and took a long lunch and dropped some stuff out of the cleaners and all this kind of stuff. Colm, he got in at 9, put his AirPods in, and just knocked out work straight till 4. So without the data, your management by walking around only gives you a limited view of what's actually going on with your workforce. So having more data is always better to help make better decisions in that. And that's where Prodoscore comes into play, is that everyone can relate to a score, right? If you can look at the score, it tells you what you need to know. We often compare this like a FICO score. There's a bunch of little things that make up your FICO score. Quite frankly, it's a lot of mystery, but there's all these things around your credit and when you pay and how much you owe and how many times your credit record has been checked. But if I walk into a car dealership and they check my credit, they can tell pretty much immediately based on my score whether or not I can afford this luxury sedan or whether they need to point me to the used car section of the lot. Similarly, we like to take in all these different data points. How much are you engaging with your tools? How much are you using them? What's the quality of your engagement? If you're in a meeting, is your camera turned on or is your camera turned off? All of that, and then we can produce a score. So a manager can quickly look and say, oh, here's what's going on, right? Is I've got this one employee who's kind of low in the productivity. I need to go manage them. I need to give them some coaching, right? Coach them up. Or I've got this one employee who scores really, really high. That's a risk of burnout. Can they keep that pace? One thing that we hear from our customers is in the last 6 months, there's been a big shift. 6 months ago, companies were really wanting to know, I think I got some people who aren't pulling their weight. Now, it's very much around burnout. They want to identify and preserve their best people because the job market is so hot. Is that they can go find a job quickly. So you want to find out who those people are. And one thing that you find is that your quality employees take on more and more work and they don't complain. So if I'm a good employee and Colm gives me a project, I'm like, yeah, sure, Colm, I'll take it. Then Nadine gives me a project. I'm like, yeah, sure, I'll take it. Next thing you know, I'm, underwater, working all kinds of hours to get these things done, and I don't complain. But what I do is go find another job. And then when I go into the boss and say, hey, I can't do this anymore, I'm out, here's my 2-week notice, it's too late. Right. So how do you have an early warning sign as to who might be burning out or who isn't being managed effectively to coach them up and help them to be a more effective employee? We are new, right? I mean, this is a new topic. We are not necessarily like a COVID story, but this return to work conversation is very much shining a spotlight on what we do. So Gartner, which is the big industry research group, they have us employee productivity monitoring on the left side there coming up right before the peak. So employee productivity monitoring is a new area, but I got to tell you, it's like really shining a light on things that people didn't know before. The way that we managed our employees before was somewhat imprecise. It was not in a data-driven way. And so now this gives us insights that we didn't have before around to what our employee base is really doing. So we have an outside group, Claremont Graduate University, and they're these behavioral scientists, data science guys. The short answer is they're super smarter than I am. And they take our data, anonymize it, and grind it up and give us intel back. And so 22% of employees are suspected of leaving due to burnout, is where they're just working too much. 10% of employees across any customer really are low productivity, which means they do an hour and 35 minutes of work a day. That's it, right? So typically by the time you're getting your second cup of coffee, 10% of your workforce is probably done for the day. And then the number one leading indicator of engagement is chat. If people are more engaged, they're chatting with their coworkers, they're collaborating with their coworkers, that if all they're doing is just sitting back and responding to emails that people send them, they're not very engaged. This is, in my opinion, a hot topic as well. I think it's be hard for companies to figure out how to drive employee engagement, employee culture in a hybrid workforce. I don't feel personally that too many companies have done a great job historically around having a programmatic approach to employee engagement, employee culture. Employee engagement, employee culture before were lots of times accidental, right? Is that you had collisions with people in the office, relationships were created, people would go to lunch. Again, somebody would go drop their American Express at the bar down the street, and you'd have a happy hour, and that was company culture, right? And that was company engagement. The ones who came to those things were engaged, the ones that didn't weren't. But now, how do you do that when some portion of your workforce is going to be hybrid, or all of it is hybrid, and you don't have those accidental collisions? So there has to be a lot more intentionality around that. And companies, I feel like, are really kind of struggling to figure out what that intentional culture building looks like in a hybrid distributed environment. Social network and density is something that we can show as well in our tool. This is a new feature that has just come out. And I think that finding the people that are crucial to your business that everyone else interacts with that may be unknown to you because there are several rungs down the ladder. I think that is a essential thing for companies to understand is, where do I have bottlenecks and who are my key contributors that maybe don't carry a revenue number, right? And in any company, Cisco, Prodoscore, you could say, hey, who's a key contributor and where do you tend to go? You tend to go to the one that generates the most revenue, right? But there are key contributors that don't have a revenue target. That how do you identify them? How do you know them without going and inquiring of every single person in the org? Who do you talk to the most? What do you talk to them about? Versus getting a data-driven way to say, hey, these 3 people right here are essential to all of our workflows. Let's investigate that a little more and make sure that those people are, happy and retained and encouraged to stick with us. The way our technology works is pretty interesting, I feel like, is that we take back-end data from the API of all the business applications. So, everything from Microsoft Office to Webex to Salesforce to ServiceNow to a whole host of other applications. I think we have 75 to 80 integrations. And we pull that data in, and then we run it through machine learning and then our proprietary algorithm and spit out a productivity score per person. Why is the API portion of this, why does that matter? And it matters a whole lot. And the reason is that this is non-invasive. Some of the other tools that have been out there a little bit longer load an agent. So they load an agent on your computer, and those tools grab things that they really shouldn't grab, have no business grabbing. Your personal stuff you may have open in a tab. They're very invasive, tracking things like keyboard and mouse movements and stuff like that, and they give a lot of false positives. So I'm a live music fan. I love live music. I have Sonos here in my office, and I'm playing music all day long. But some people, what if I opened up a tab and just kicked off a playlist of one of my favorite bands on YouTube and just listened to their concerts in the background all day? Our competitor products that are agent-based would tell my boss that I was on YouTube for 8 hours, right? If I did that. Now I'm going to get a phone call from him and goes, Dave, are you really on YouTube for 8 hours? Why are you on YouTube for 8 hours? We have to have this conversation versus it's just a background thing. It's no different than having CNBC on a TV, in your room. But because we only tie into the API, now we're only getting business data from business applications. I don't care if you've got Netflix streaming in the background. I don't care if you're listening to YouTube all day. We're not going to be invasive like that. We're just going to take the business applications and say, hey, here's what was going on in these business applications, and then present that output from a productivity standpoint back out. Because we use the API, it becomes device independent. We don't have to load a bunch of software on all your different devices. So if you start, as Colm showed in that video, if you start a Webex call on your phone, or you pick it up on your iPad, or you pick it up on your computer, or if you pick it up wherever you're logged in, we're going to capture that data so that we get a full picture of your productivity across the business applications that the company has issued to you. And how this all plays out is this idea of visibility. I like to tell this story where, Life 360 is a great app. If you don't have Life 360, if you've got kids, it'll be something that you will get as they get older. I have a 23-year-old son, 19-year-old daughter. When my son was coming up, Life 360 was new and we didn't have it for him. So what happened is we micromanaged him, right? It's like if he went from one friend's house to another friend's house, he was supposed to text us and let him know that he went from this guy's house to this guy's house. You know, if it was 11:45 and he had a curfew at 12, I may be calling him like, hey, you on your way home? He's like, well, yeah, I'm on the interstate or whatever, right? So he felt like we were kind of micromanaging-y because we didn't have any other tools at our disposal. My daughter comes along, we put Life 360 on her phone. So now we know where she is. So she doesn't have to text us and say she went from this location to this location. We can just see that she went from there to there. If it's 11:45, she's supposed to be home at 12, I can pull up Life 360, see she was on the interstate on her way back. So we had visibility, and that visibility gave her more freedom, right? And that's really exactly what we're seeing play out with our clients. We have a client in a large metropolitan area up in the Northeast, and they have to commute maybe an hour and a half, 2 hours into the city. And they don't like that, right? They would rather be at home. One of them, they told us exactly, hey, I get online at 7 if I don't have to go to the office, and I'll stay online till 6 when I work from home. So she's putting in from 7 to 6. But if she goes to the office, she has to leave her house around 6:30 or 7. It's like an hour and a half, 2-hour train ride into the office. She gets there around 9. Then she said she makes the rounds and like talks to people and checks in on everybody, gets to her desk around 9:30, gets working, and then she leaves at 3:30 to take the 2-hour train back home and then get back to her house. She gets home at 6. So all that commute time is just wasted time. So they're desperate. They're like, hey, yes, put Prodoscore on us. Let us prove to the C-suite that we are more productive at home so that we can continue to have this flexibility of remote work. And so this idea of visibility, giving people what they want, is that the employers want accountability. They want to know that the people they're writing checks to on the 15th and the last day of the month, that they're getting something for that. And the employees want flexibility. I want to work from wherever, whenever. And so the only way that both of them get what they want is the visibility. Is that if they have visibility, the employees get the freedom that they want, and the employers get the accountability that they require. So that's what Prodoscore does. And, you know, like I mentioned, our data shows that the strongest correlation to employee engagement is use of collaboration tools. So it was super important for us to have a tight integration to Webex, and we do. And we have a great integration, and we're thrilled to be partnered with Cisco. And what that allows us to do is to have all of this data pulled in, and it's in a nice and granular and detailed way so that now employers can look at that and say, okay, we have data-driven HR decisions now, right? We can know who our key people are. We know how to apply our management efforts. I think one thing that one of our clients told us I thought was interesting is they said that you tend to get this whole idea of managers will just sprinkle a little bit of management across all 10 of their employees. Say you got 10 people and I just sprinkle a little management across all 10. Well, with Prodoscore, now I have data and I can see, ooh, this person needs extra help and this person needs extra help. This person's about to burn out. This one needs coaching up. And now that gives me the opportunity to focus on managerial efforts instead of just kind of spreading the peanut butter thin across the toast for everybody. So that's really where Prodoscore plays. That's what we do. It is a hot topic, and if you were interested in hearing more about it, Mike at Prodoscore would be the best way to reach out for us to show you a demo and show you what it looks like in real time. Do we have any questions in the chat? Nadine, I'm sorry I was trying not to glance through there.
You're okay. Let me take a quick look. So somebody, I do think you addressed this. Somebody was asking about the fact that this could seem invasive, but
Yeah.
I think a way to address this is like, how do employees typically respond to this kind of solution?
Yeah, I think that the invasiveness is, and look, it's I don't know the demographics of our attendees today, but for the younger folks that have been on TikTok, you've probably seen some funny TikTok videos where people had the invasive software. So you've seen these videos of people like taping their mouse to a wooden spoon and then the wooden spoon to oscillating fan. So as the fan moves, their mouse moves, so they can get credit for working when they're actually not. So when you play stupid games, you win stupid prizes, right? So I think that some of our competitive tools that are agent based, create this weird environment where people are doing all this stuff to try to like game the system because it is very invasive. As if I want to get up and go to the restroom, I don't need to have my fan moving my mouse so that it looks like I was working, that time. We're not invasive at all, right? It's that the business applications, all that data is already there. All the data already exists, and we're just pulling it out and giving it to the team in a very meaningful way. So typically, I think that when you said how is it received by employees, I think the desire to have that flexibility right now is so high, is that employees, resoundingly state in surveys and polls that they want the flexibility that remote work gave them. They still want to come back to the office. The CEO of Microsoft, they did a big employee survey, and he called it the Great Paradox, is where like a bunch of their employees said that they want to be around their coworkers, but then they also said they all want to be remote. And he's like, well, how do I give you, collaboration and in-person experience and, everyone is remote. So there is this, tension there that has to be managed. And so I'll say that a lot of our client base right now is like, hey, if Prodoscore can show my productivity and my effort, and in exchange for that, then I get to, enjoy flexibility and, remote work, then I'm totally down for that. So really your quality employees are more than happy for their bosses to see how much work they are actually doing. And I think that it does lead to some of those conversations where bosses can tell their teams, hey, you guys need to chill out a little bit. You can't continue to work at that pace.
Awesome, thank you. And then there's another question here about the score. So how is it useful? What should managers do with that information?
Yeah, we like to say that it is a data point. It is not the data point, right? Is as a manager, there's lots of data points that you should be pulling in around your employees. Maybe there's revenue targets that they're hitting, or maybe there's things in their quarterly employee review that you've given them that they need to work on, whether it's professionalism or their public speaking or whatever it may be, things that you've given them. But there's usually not a lot of data around that. A lot of companies have these kind of vague things in the employee reviews, like did you live the company values, or do you demonstrate integrity? I mean, those things are somewhat ephemeral and kind of hard to get your arms around. So, but there's not a lot of data. And so we can take the data and add those data points in. So if you've got somebody who says, man, I feel like I'm working all the time, I need a breather, and then you look in Prodoscore and their productivity is not really that high, well, there's a disconnect there. Or if you've got somebody who's like, I keep getting more and more projects and I don't know how to say no, and you look at Prodoscore and their productivity is like this unsustainable level, then you can try to go get them some help. Or you've got the guy that's like, what's the common answer inside the office is, what do you need to be more successful? I need more people. That's what they always say. But can you look at their team? Do they have capacity in their model for their team, or are they really all at capacity? And you're like, okay, they're telling the truth. We need to go hire somebody to give these people some relief. So it just allows you to have data to tie out to the typical kind of conversations you have and compare the two and make better decisions that way.